Hello and welcome to this Tenant Cloud webinar. If you can hear me, my name is Chris, by the way, and just wanted to thank you for joining us for this webinar presentation. If you can hear me, if you can go ahead and hit one of those emoticon icons in the bottom of your screen there. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. It says that my microphone is working, but you never know. So I always like to test. So I appreciate your help with that. Today's webinar presentation is going to be based on how to leverage the Tenant Cloud marketing tools in growing your business. And as we all know, one of the most important things in managing a rental property is listing rentals and getting applications and keeping the rentals occupied, reducing vacancy rates, reducing turnover costs, and all of that good stuff. So hopefully the information that you learn in this webinar will be helpful in helping you accomplish those goals. I do like to make the point of noting that nothing in these webinars is ever going to be rocket science. There's not really a whole lot of rocket science that takes place in property management to begin with. But if you're like me, it's always good to get a refresher course on things that we're even familiar with, just to make sure that we're not overlooking things and just to make sure that we're brushed up on all of the important elements of that aspect of our role as a property manager. So hopefully, even if you don't learn anything new, this information will just be helpful to you in general in just brushing up on some things that maybe you've gotten a little rusty on over the past couple years. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen here and I'm going to show you a couple of things. We're going to dive into the actual Tenant Cloud platform real quick, just to show you a few of the places for anybody that's new in here. Some of the parts of the Tenant Cloud system that help you accomplish some of the things that we're going to talk about in the actual presentation. And so for those of you who are already very familiar with the Tenant Cloud platform, just bear with me here for a few minutes while we just go through and touch some of these tools in the Tenant Cloud system. Again, if you can see me sharing my screen, if you wouldn't mind hitting the emoticon buttons. Awesome. Cool. Glad you can see it. All right. So this here is the Tenant Cloud dashboard. And the Tenant Cloud dashboard has a few different tools on it that really help you to efficiently market your rental properties. And the first place is underneath the listings tab, where you have the listings and the leads sections. And the listing section right here is where you're going to see all of your rental properties, whether they're listed or unlisted, how many leads you've got, any matches for prospective tenants, and any applications that are new or pending for your rental property. And you can click on each of these to quickly jump to that section. So if I wanted to find unlisted rental properties, which in your case, hopefully it's the opposite. Hopefully you have 69 listed, or hopefully you actually no, hopefully this is your scenario. You have one listed and only 69 unlisted because you have actual tenants in your rental property. In my case, this is a demo account, so I have 69 unlisted and one listed. But if I wanted to find the unlisted, I would go in here, or I can type into the search bar to quickly find it and pull up the rental that I need to get listed online. And from here, I can go through and list the unit, and I can select to list it to the free ILS and send it out to a bunch of different rental property networks. And then, of course, each of those networks has their own sister networks. So all in all, it ends up going to well over a dozen rental listing platforms. And I just need to make sure that all of my stuff in here is correct in terms of property amenities, property features, and photos, cover photos, listing photos. And then I have the opportunity to make sure that my marketing description is accurate and a YouTube video walkthrough if I have one of those for this particular rental property, and so on. And when I go through and submit the listing, it's going to then syndicate this listing out, not only to the various listing websites out there, but also to my own marketing website, which, if you're not familiar with that, that is located over here underneath your gear wheel icon. and it's underneath the listing website section where you can go and change the various settings of it from being just a simple rental page to being more of a company website where you have the ability to modify more aspects of your free listing website. So, for example, this one here, I believe is, yeah, mycompany.tenantcloud.com. So, if in your browser, if you were to go to mycompany.tenantcloud.com, then you would see my demo listing website. And that's just where people can go. I can send them a link so that they can apply to the rental property, fill out an application, and so on. And I can customize some aspects of that website through this website layout tab. And depending on which plan you are on, some of these may be limited features on your account. I believe most of this functionality is fully available on the growth plan or higher. And you have the ability to come in here and modify a lot of this stuff, including adding your own custom domain, which doesn't necessarily change the website itself, your listing website. It just gives you more branding control. So instead of being a subdomain like mycompany.tenantcloud.com, it becomes just mycompany.com. So it's just an easier way. If somebody says, hey, I'd really like to apply to your rental, where can I go to do that online? You can either send them a link through the applications tab or even through the listings tab. Or you can just say, hey, just go to mycompany.com or whatever your website is, lamarrentals.com, for example. Another quick way to do that is to simply invite to apply. And you just select the listed property that is available for rentals. And then you put in the email address for that person and just click send invitation. It's going to send them an email and it's basically going to say, hey, property management company XYZ is inviting you to apply for this rental property. Click here to view or start your application. And when they click that, it's going to take them to your website, your custom domain, to the listing that you selected, and it's going to drop them right into the flow of applying for that rental property. And so from the time that your tenant applies, after you've listed it, to the time that you send them the application to move in, it's all one seamless flow on the Tenant Cloud platform. And there's also a few other parts or elements of that process, such as the leads, where when you get a lead that comes in from one of those listing syndication partners, you can actually text them back. And so you can send them a text message. And we're going to go over some of this stuff as well during the actual presentation as to why that is so important and how powerful of a tool that really is. And so hopefully that brief overview gives you a good snapshot of some of the elements of the marketing tools on Tenant Cloud, from being able to list to over a dozen rental listing sites in just a few clicks, to being able to accept leads that are coming in and communicating with them rapidly, and also a seamless flow of when you get somebody who's interested, texting them, getting them to tour the rental property. And then once they tour, you can do it from your mobile phone right there in the property and say, hey, if they're expressing interest in it, hey, I'd love to have you apply for it. Seems like you're really interested in the rental property. You could literally do this from your mobile phone right there, standing with the prospective tenant, and click invite to apply. Say, hey, what's your email address? I'll go ahead and send you that application over. Put in their email address, send invitation. They'll get it 5 seconds later in their email. They click the link. They can do their application right there from their smartphone. And then you get the application right into your application box right here. You can screen them. You could actually literally do all of this probably within 10 minutes of just standing there with the prospective tenant looking at the rental property if you wanted to do it that way. So that flow is very simple. It can be done from a smartphone, laptop, desktop, tablet, whatever. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the actual presentation that's going to explore why some of these tools are essential and how to utilize them in the best possible way for your specific business, and some of the best practices and why some of those best practices are so important and the impact they have. So If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to post them in the chat thread, and we will answer your questions at the end of this presentation and go over any questions you have and hopefully provide clarity on anything that maybe we didn't dive too deeply in during this presentation. So we're going to jump in and get started. We do try to keep these under 20 to 30 minutes. I believe we allotted maybe 30, maybe 45 minutes for this. I tend to go over, so I do apologize if that happens. No worries. We do have these recorded. And so if you would like to view the recording or need people on your team to be able to view this recording at any time in the near future, you will be able to use that same link that you use to join this event to be able to come back to it to view the recorded version later. We also typically upload these live webinars onto our Tenant Cloud YouTube channel, where we also have hundreds of other videos on there as well. So you have plenty of content to be able to view about the Tenant Cloud platform and marketing. And we have a podcast on there as well. If you've never listened to the Tenant Cloud podcast, that is also uploaded to our Tenant Cloud YouTube channel as well. So this is just a brief overview of all of the key points regarding what we're going to cover. Introduction to marketing tools, strategies for utilizing them, creating a marketing plan, analyzing and measuring the success of your marketing efforts, and how to maximize the benefits of TenantCloud's marketing tools. So as we discussed already, property management marketing tools, it's probably the single most important element of managing a rental property, because if you are not utilizing the tools properly and you're not getting tenants into the rental property, then you don't have the cash flow. And at that point, what is the point of having a rental property if nobody is renting it, right? And so we're going to jump into the strategies for utilizing those marketing tools. The first one that we just went over briefly, and I didn't showcase the actual marketing website, but hopefully you were able to go to that on your browser. It's mycompany.tenantcloud.com. This is TenantCloud's online listing website. Now, keep in mind, again, those listings on that site will only go to those syndication partners if you selected that option on the very first page when you went to go to list the rental. If you just selected to list it to your own listing website, then that's the only place it's going to show up, is on your listing website for your TenantCloud account. But using that tool is important. And the reason for that is because the images, first of all, that you put up, that cover image that we saw when I was going through that briefly, which is this image right here, and the follow-up gallery images on the listing are going to be the way they show up on listing partner sites as well. So it's important that the images that you use are very high quality photos, and that you're utilizing accurate descriptions. And if you do have a YouTube video tour video link, then it's highly recommended that you put that in there as well, so that it shows up on the various listing websites. It's become a lot more popular over the years, especially since 2020, when a lot of people were not touring in person. And a lot of people became comfortable with using those walkthrough videos to get a better sense of if they were interested in that rental property without even seeing it. It's especially helpful for people who are moving from out of town. Depending on where you are here in Texas, a lot of people move to Texas from out of state, sight unseen, and they need a rental property before they get here. And so it's not uncommon for them to rely on walkthrough videos in order to be able to make those decisions. And a lot of rental properties that I've managed over the years, when I would get inquiries, I would actually do live walkthroughs with them sometimes. And this was years ago when technology wasn't exactly, it was, the video tour technology on the listing websites was not quite there yet. It wasn't very prevalent, and a lot of people either didn't see the links, or the various listing partners just didn't have a spot for that link. And so A lot of times, if people couldn't find it or whatever, we would just go and do actual live walkthroughs with them. And a lot of people have made decisions on renting our rental property as a result of those walkthroughs. So it's probably a good idea. And of course, it depends on your market, of course, but utilizing those links can be very powerful in helping you market your rental property. And if you're doing it and your competitors are not, that could potentially give you an edge as well. And a lot of search engines these days are favoring web pages that feature videos as well. So it could potentially give you an edge there as well with your actual listings. Listing syndication is also a very powerful tool. We touched on that a couple times already, but the listing website just goes to your Tenant Cloud marketing website. And this goes to both. It'll post both to your listing website and to the free ILS websites, as well as to each of their networks of sites as well. And so back in the day, you used to have to create an account for all these different listing partners and go list your rental at all these different websites. And then you had to keep track of the leads on all of those websites. And it was just a huge pain and hassle and a complete time suck. And so now you can do it all through the Tenant Cloud platform and get those leads all coming in through the same funnel and managing those listings all from a single account. And so that is an incredibly powerful tool that you want to make sure that you are utilizing if you aren't already. The Tenant Cloud CRM system. I touched on this briefly where there is a send a text message button, and you can actually message your leads very quickly. The reason that that is so powerful is because a lot of research has been done over the years through surveys and whatnot that indicates that your response time to prospective tenants has an impact on whether that prospective tenant leases with you versus somebody else down the road who responded quicker. And so the faster that you are able to respond to somebody, the more likely they are to become a tenant at your rental property versus somebody down the street. And not just that, but text messaging, other surveys and research has found that text messages in particular tend to be viewed and responded to and interacted with much more frequently and faster than other methods such as phone calls, which a lot of, again, more surveys, a lot of tenants, a lot of people in general do not, especially these younger generations, do not like talking on the phone. They prefer text, they prefer email, they prefer messenger through social media and those different types of communications channels. And so when you are able to text somebody, you get in front of them immediately because 9 times out of 10, think about yourself. How often is your phone attached to your body? And you probably have notifications on your phone, particularly for text messages. And you might even have your phone set to vibrate or whatever. And sometimes maybe you've been talking to somebody and they get a notification and you're like, how rude, you pulled up your phone to look at a notification while I'm talking to you. It's probably because they got a text message from somebody who they were inquiring about a rental property. I'm just kidding. That's probably not what was happening. But you get the point. The text messaging tool is incredibly powerful for your marketing arsenal and being able to get in front of people quickly and connect with that prospective lead right away, probably even seconds after they just hit the submit button and put in the lead to begin with. And so that is a very, very powerful tool. If you're not utilizing it, I highly recommend it. It's available on the starter, the growth, and the business plan. And so I highly recommend utilizing that to communicate with prospective tenants. Social media links. A lot of people, again, in creating this presentation, I knew already that I was not going to have the time to dive into all of the different surveys and research because there's so much around it, but it's very easily found online just by searching things like social media, researching social media on businesses or researching business social media pages or things like how do current generations prefer to communicate? Do they like text or phone or whatever? So it's relatively easy to find a lot of that information. But another one of the pieces of data on this is that a lot more people, especially the younger generations, are starting to research social media accounts on businesses before they interact with them. And whether that's to make sure that the business is active or whether or not they're getting good reviews online through social media channels, because there's a lot of review sites that a lot of people are just don't trust or are losing trust in. And a lot of social media channels are places where people go, especially like Facebook business pages, where they get a better sense of if this business is active and do people like this business? What are the comments on the threads like? Are they posting good images on a regular basis? Are they having holiday events coming up? Like that type of thing. And so a active social media account can really go a long ways towards your marketing efforts for your rental property. And it also gives people a good sense of your if your tenants enjoy staying there, because if you've looked at a lot of different rental properties social media pages, you'll notice that some of the ones that maybe aren't doing such a great job, their tenants tend to let them know that on their social media accounts. And so a lot of people are using social media for that reason and other reasons as well. But putting your social media links on your listings and on your website, including your Tenant Cloud listing website, is probably a good idea, assuming you're actually utilizing social media to begin with. And if you're not leveraging social media in your marketing efforts, then you may want to consider doing so in the near future and consider some of the strategies around your social media management of your accounts to utilize it properly through things like relevant hashtags, maybe promotional campaigns, giveaways, that type of thing. Email marketing as a part of your marketing tools. This is one of probably the lesser utilized marketing elements in property management, because it's not like a restaurant or a dessert shop or destination where people are going, where it's like you offer discounts to people to come in because people only typically move once a year, once every few years, right? It's not like something that happens on a weekly or monthly basis. You're not trying to entice people in on this email list because they probably rented elsewhere. However, email marketing can still be a powerful tool if you are keeping an email marketing list for your rental property. And this is especially helpful if you have more than just one or two rentals. And maybe you have a bunch of rentals, even if they're a bunch of single family homes or duplexes or whatever, in a certain regional area. Or if you have a multifamily property, of course, this is especially powerful for you as well. And it could be just something as simple as once a month or once a quarter, just sending out maybe local updates about things that are happening in your area, and then maybe a snippet about any available rentals that you have at your rentals in the area, and their proximity to some of these things that are happening and all of that good stuff. It's also a great way to keep a wait list of prospective tenants who have expressed interest in your rental property, but maybe you didn't have what they wanted or needed at that time. And so you put them on your wait list, email list, because maybe they're looking 90 days out or 120 days out or whatever. Or maybe they really, really, really wanted to stay at your rental property and they decided to crash with a relative or a friend until they could find a property that they really, really liked instead of settling for something they didn't want. And so there's a ton of different scenarios. Those are just a few that come to the top of my mind. But an email marketing list, whether it's a wait list or just reaching out to your current tenants and prospective tenants on a regular basis, just to let them know about what's going on in the area, any holiday events that are coming up, any special events you might be hosting, that type of thing is a very powerful tool. And so if you're not utilizing that, it's something, again, you might want to consider implementing. Another great way to do that is with your existing tenants is to use the property message board. If you were on the starter plan, you don't have access to the property message board. If you're on the growth plan or higher, you do. And the property message board allows you to communicate with all of your tenants at all of your properties all at once. Or you can communicate with tenants at 3 out of your 5 properties or 5 out of the 10 properties, whatever you want. It's just a mass communication tool, and a lot of people utilize it for things like freeze warnings or um, after maybe a major storm, communicating with your tenants and letting them know, like, hey, if you had anything crazy happen at the property, like a tree limb fell down, please let us know right away. We're going to try to get all the properties this week, but if you can let us know in advance, that'd be great so we can get it resolved, that type of thing. But there's also another way to utilize it, which is what we were just talking about with the email marketing, which is communicating about community events or things that are happening nearby or special events in whatever town you're located in. As well as incorporating in things like promotions. If you're offering referral fees, let's say you have vacant rental properties that are nearby, and you can communicate that with your existing tenants and say, hey, we're offering referral fees for anybody that refers a qualified tenant, and it's a promotion that's good through June 30th. And it's this property. And you could even post a link on there for them so that they can share that link with their friends and family. And it's a good way to just reach out and stay in communication with your tenants, as well as just to foster uh, better rapport with your tenants as well. And as we all know, better communication, more transparency with tenants also often translates into more renewals and tenant retention down the road. So it's a great way using the property message board to do that on TenantCloud. The custom domain we already talked about a little bit, but basically it is a better way to brand your website. So instead of telling somebody to go to mycompany.tenantcloud.com, you can just tell them to go to mycompany.com. It's also a great way because if you have tenants that go to mycompany.com and it's your Tenant Cloud listing website, they can go ahead and log into their account from there and get into their account. It's just a great way to have your own branded presence through the Tenant Cloud listing website. It's especially powerful if you don't already have your own website outside of the Tenant Cloud listing website. It's a great way to have that if you don't already have that. And if you don't have a third-party website, it's probably worth noting that it's usually a good idea to also have like a branded website in general that maybe has a blog and all kinds of other features and functionality about it. And you can put a link on that directs people to your listing website. So it could be a button on that website that says view available listings or view listings, and it directs them to your listings on your Tenant Cloud site. Or you could put a button for tenants, says like tenant login. And when they click that, it takes them to the homepage of your branded site where they can then click login as a tenant. So there's different ways to utilize it and different reasons why utilizing the Tenant Cloud listing website can be a powerful tool in your marketing arsenal. But especially the custom domain is a really cool feature to have for branding and marketing purposes. Another element of doing this is having the ability to manage virtual assistants or people who work remotely, or even just people who maybe you work on site, and just being able to control their level of access and based on their role in the properties they manage. So, for example, let's say you have somebody who is on your team and you don't want them to be able to view and interact with things like accounting entries, but you do want them to be able to do things like create leases. Or let's say you have a maintenance tech that you only want them to be able to handle maintenance tickets because that's their primary role. They don't do leasing, they handle maintenance. You can limit that person's account access based on their role. And you can say, okay, this person's a maintenance tech, so I'm going to give them these permissions to interact with maintenance tickets, but not these other things. So when they log into their account, they will only have access to those things that are important to their day-to-day routine. Likewise, you can also control access by property. So for example, if you have somebody who you have 10 properties, but you only want them to see and interact with 5 of those 10 properties, you can limit their access based on property and by their role. And so there's different levels of control, but you have that granular control over access of other people that you give access to their account. And none of those team member or assistant or remote worker accounts are going to have any type of access to the main admin account. It's just basically an employee account that you create for them. This is typically a feature that only starts on the business plan. However, if you are on the growth plan, our sales team has options if you upgrade to, for instance, the growth annual plan, to be able to connect you with a complimentary team member. But just feel free to reach out to the sales team if you have any questions about these other accounts and adding team members and helping you get set up with that, because it's a great way to utilize, especially things like virtual assistants and remote workers who maybe you are using for marketing purposes. Maybe you've hired somebody specifically to help you to market your rental properties. And so by giving them access to the account based on what they need access to, you can keep your account secure while still hiring somebody to help you with your marketing efforts for marketing your rental properties and handling those incoming leads to make sure that they're responded to promptly, especially if you are kind of like a one man or one woman show where you are extremely busy and you don't have time to necessarily follow up with leads as quickly as you'd like to. It's probably a good idea to bring somebody on board, even if it's part-time, to be able to help respond to those incoming leads if that's something that is important for your business at that point in the growth of your company. Section 3 is creating a marketing plan. It's one thing to have all of these different tools and ability to market, but it's quite another to utilize an actual plan to make those tools as effective as they can be. Because it's one thing to be able to syndicate rentals out to listing websites. It's quite another to draw people in and capture their attention. Because as you're probably well aware, people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter to the point where now it is seconds. And so when somebody looks, especially at prospective tenants, look at a listing page, you have seconds to grab their attention to pull them in to the point where they're ready to click that inquire now or apply now button or contact the landlord or property manager buttons. And so it's important that you have a marketing plan. So one of those things is identifying your target audience. And you've probably heard this said before. Really, what it's just saying is that you need to know who the demographics typically are that are most likely to rent at your rental property. And you've probably noticed, if you've never worked at an apartment community before, it's pretty quick to get a sense of what type of people generally rent at specific places, whether it's based on the location of your rental property in the city, or it's the type of amenities that you offer, or it's the price point at which your rental property is priced at. You tend to have a pretty good sense of what demographic tends to apply and inquire about your rental property. And so once you have a good sense of that, it's important that you create your marketing message that speaks to that specific audience. And so if you're not quite sure of who your target audience is, then you may want to do some initial research on that, or maybe just write down a list of all of your prior tenants, for example, and maybe see if there's any trends in your prior tenant history to get a better sense of that. There's also a lot of helpful tools out there as well in terms of marketing research to identify target markets that you can utilize as well. The next thing you want to do is you want to set marketing goals. Maybe it's you have 10 rental properties and maybe 9 of those are going to be expiring leases in the next 120 days. Well, maybe you need to come up with part of your marketing goal is you want to get 7 of those 9 leases renewed in the next 120 days. And so coming up with a strategy on how to do that. In fact, in one of our podcasts recently, we also talked about how to get renewed leases early. And we're about to actually post a video that we recently did here this past week on I believe our YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok channels as well. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a quick 3-minute video on how to improve your renewal rates. So that's becoming increasingly important right now, especially with the vacancy rates ticking up around the country and the rental market becoming a little bit tighter than it has been for the past, forever. The rental market has definitely been making some shifts. And so it's going to be really important to understand how to get tenants to renew and retain tenants more often and the strategies around that. And so maybe that's one of your marketing goals is that out of those 9 leases that are ending, I'm going to put an effort to renew at least 7 out of those 9. Or maybe it is you have 3 vacancies that have been sitting vacant for 2 weeks and you want to get at least 2 of the 3 filled within the next 14 days before the end of that 30-day period. And so coming up with marketing goals is important as well, because then you become more focused and you develop your strategy and you devote your time and resources to accomplishing those goals if you set them. If you don't set them, then you may be missing out on doing those things, such as devoting time and resources and not being focused on those things, and it might not happen. The next one is choose the marketing channels. Now, obviously, the syndication tool is great. It syndicates out to all of these major listing platforms. And in most cases, depending on your location, you're probably going to get a ton of leads coming in. However, that may not be the case in your market. Maybe your market is, and maybe the demographic, this is where the demographic comes in again, is maybe your demographic is more active on social media, in local social media groups. Maybe they're posting in local social media groups saying, hey, does anybody know of any rentals in this particular neighborhood? And if you are not responding to those, or you're not posting things about, hey, my rental is available, it's in this neighborhood, in this area, near these things, it's a great way to get word of mouth marketing, where there's tons of people who know people who are looking for apartment rentals or for rental homes. And so just by putting your information out there about your rental property, where it's located, what it's near, the proximity it is to maybe various companies or commute locations, bus routes, train stations, that type of thing, can be very powerful in getting your message passed along, even if you don't see it happening. Somebody might just uh, tell their friend or tag a friend or share the listing or say, hey, I saved this. I bookmarked this post on social media. Check this out. You said you were looking for a rental property in this area. Here it is. So it's a very powerful way to market. The email marketing, we already talked about that. Local advertising. Throughout the years, have gotten probably more rentals from local advertising than I have through even some of the most powerful online marketing tools. And those range from anything from digital billboards to physical billboards to bandit signs at intersections, those little signs that you see posted in the ground. They're like 20 by 20 inches or whatever, and they're on the little metal stakes, and they've got, it just says rental available starting from $1,200, call, or just has the phone number listed, to putting up balloons outside of the rental property with a sign that says now leasing, or there's a ton of different ways to utilize it, or pinning up papers inside on bulletin boards inside of restaurants and other locations around the place where my rental property is located, to going to universities and giving and talking to their front office and saying, hey, we have rental properties nearby and we'd love to have your students apply for them. They'll get reduced deposits. They'll get reduced application fees, reduced admin fees. They'll get expedited, blah, 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 whatever it is. And fostering those relationships with local organizations and universities and the like, because they constantly have people who are coming in from out of town and they need a place to stay. And it may be community colleges that you go to in your area, and foster those relationships. And you'd be surprised how many referrals and leads you get from places like that. There's a ton of different methods you can use for local advertising, and nearly all of them are incredibly powerful. And you will find that you will probably have more leads than you probably know what to do with. So if you're struggling with online leads for whatever reason, whether it's your market, your demographic, or you're just not really able to pin down your marketing message and you're not really attracting people through social media or through online marketing, then definitely go for local advertising, because that can be incredibly powerful with having to do very little in terms of your messaging. It can literally just be rental available, 1200 phone number, and that's it. And you'd be surprised that you'll start getting phone calls. The next one is crafting compelling messaging and creating high quality content for your marketing channels. If you are creating a rental listing online and all you put on there is something that you would put on like a bandit sign, you're probably not going to pull in the number of applications that you thought you were going to pull in, because your online messaging has to be more targeted, has to be more compelling, has to be more succinct, has to be more descriptive. And it has to really inform the prospective tenant of what your rental is, what it offers, what it's near, and why they should be interested in your rental property. And so describing your rental property properly and maybe even excitedly, or trying different tones in your messaging content, also describing what amenities and features you have and value add offers you have, whether it's a single family home and you have bikes that come with the rental and they can bike to all kinds of cool places nearby, or there's a bus stop literally a block away that they can walk to, your street is well lit, whatever it might be. Your crime statistics are super low for the area, and maybe you even provide a link or resource that shows that, improves that. There's a ton of different ways to really highlight your community and communicate that compelling message that tells somebody why this is a great rental for them to stay out, versus the listing that they just looked at 5 seconds prior that had more compelling messaging than yours, and they're probably leaning towards that rental property. It also helps if you know who your demographic is. Maybe you get a lot of students, and making sure that in all of your listings you highlight how close it is to the university or the community college or the trade school or whatever it is where you tend to get a lot of renters coming from. Or maybe it's a certain company, you get a lot of employees that come in there, whether it's contract employees or whatnot. And so making sure that you're developing your messaging and content is essential for online listings and will get you a lot more traction when marketing online. The other one is allocating a budget. Now, again, this may not necessarily be needed for a lot of people, but just something to keep in mind. If you are struggling with, again, online marketing or even local marketing, and you feel like you're just not getting in front of a lot of prospective tenants for whatever reason, then it may be something you need to invest and allocate a budget for, to maybe buy things like bandit signs and maybe pay for social media ads or for pay-per-click ads on Google or whatever. And so just something to keep in mind, that you typically need a budget regardless. If you're generally getting leads from the major listing websites, then it may not be as important. But there's probably going to come a point in time in your career as a landlord or property manager that you're going to need to become creative in your marketing. And a lot of times that's going to require some type of a budget. So making sure that you have that budget, you've allocated it, and you are ready to rock and roll with the funds needed to implement that. The next one is implementing and monitoring. You need to execute your marketing plan and regularly monitor its performance. This is important because this goes back to a lot of the stuff I've kind of been touching on as we've touched on each of these points, is that it's one thing to throw spaghetti at the wall and hope that something sticks, right? But it's much more powerful if you already know what sticks and you focus on that thing or those 3 things instead of the 10 things. And you can focus your energy and resources on those 3 things. What I mean by that is, if you've done social media marketing and you've done local marketing and you've done online syndication marketing and you've done all these different forms of marketing, you should be able to tell somebody at the drop of a hat where most of your leads are coming from, or at least where most of your qualified leads are coming from. And if you're not keeping track of that, then you should start doing so as of yesterday, because you should be able to look at your data and say, okay, this year I got 50 leads for my 10 rental properties. And out of those 50 leads, 27 of them came from my local marketing efforts. And out of those 27, 13 of them became tenants, or 8 of them became tenants, and the other 2 came from the other forms of marketing. Like, you should know that information right now. You should be able to provide somebody with that information right now. And so if you don't know the answer to those questions, where are the vast majority of your leads coming from? And out of those leads, where are your most qualified leads coming from? Because you might be getting, out of those 100 leads, you might be getting 75 that aren't turning into quality tenants. It might be those other 25 leads from the other sources that are actually becoming your qualified tenants at your rental properties. And you really need to know that information, because then you can devote your time and effort and resources into focusing on those channels going forward, and less time, if any time at all, on the other marketing channels that are really just maybe even wasting your time. if that makes sense. So it's important that you track those metrics and have a way to track that. It could be as simple as just asking people, where'd you hear about us? If you don't already know, if you don't already know that they came from apartments.com or Zillow or from your Facebook posts or from your bandit sign that they called you from. If you don't know, you should ask. And that should maybe even be a question on your application, which it's worth noting you can customize your application on Tenant Cloud and even create a custom question that says, how did you hear about us? And you can make it multiple choice. You can make it yes or no. You can make it all kinds of different things. You can customize the questions. And so it's helpful to ask that question on your application. How did you hear about us? And maybe put in a couple of ideas so that people really think about where they heard about you. And if they say, I don't know, then maybe you should reach out to them at some point just to be like, hey, I know you said you didn't know how you heard about us, but it would really help us with our marketing efforts if you knew where you heard about us. Because a lot of times people just put NA or I don't know because they just don't feel like answering the question. But it really is beneficial for you to know how to nail down your marketing efforts for the future and to spend your budget, your time, your resources wisely. Section 4, analyzing and measuring the success of your marketing efforts. This is, again, going to tie into what we were just talking about, which is things like conversion rates. How many of your leads or inquiries converted into leases and signed agreements? This is going to impact, like we were just talking about, where you spend most of your time, not just based on where you're getting the most of your leads from, but where most of your qualified leads are coming from. The other thing you want to have a better idea of is your cost per acquisition. If you're getting 100 leads, how much did those 100 leads cost you? And out of those 100 leads, how many converted into qualified leads? Because then you want to know, you want to break it down to what did it ultimately cost on a qualified lead basis so that you really know how to allocate your budget. Because if you don't know those numbers, then you don't know how to allocate a budget because you don't know how much it costs to get those leads or get the qualified leads. So identifying what your cost per acquisition is. If it's zero, that's great in terms of dollars. Let's say you just used online syndication through the Tenant Cloud platform. That's great. But if you're in a market where maybe that's not always the case, you really should have a good sense of your cost per acquisition. And the overall return on investment, not just the investment of your money, but the return on investment of your time and the amount spent trying to market your rental property and what those efforts produced. Again, all of these things kind of tie into the overall message of what we've been talking about for like the past 10 minutes of where to spend your time and resources and allocate your budgets and how to even allocate a budget in the first place and the information you need to be able to do so. And again, track the sources from which your leads or inquiries originate, online platforms, social media, referrals, or other marketing channels. Analyzing those lead sources helps to identify the most effective channels and allocate resources accordingly. And social media engagement. You want to track where are you getting the most engagement? Are you posting a lot on your Facebook pages? And are you posting on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter? And where are you getting the most interaction? Because again, that is probably going to determine where you spend most of your focus. Not every rental property is going to do well on a Facebook business page. And not every rental property is going to do good on TikTok. But some will and some won't. And so your strategy is going to change based on the demographic that you attract to your rental property, the area your rental property is located in, and so on, and the messaging of your content that you're posting on those channels. And if you're not getting any interaction on any of your social media pages at all, then that may mean that maybe your messaging overall is not being targeted to the people on that specific platform, because Facebook is a different platform, Twitter is a different platform, TikTok, they're all different, and they all have different ways of interacting, and you have to use different strategies for creating content. It's not one size fits all. They're all very different communication networks that you have to craft messages for specifically for that channel. And so you want to try to identify which ones are worth your time and effort and resources and focus on those. And so tracking your metrics on your various social media networks is essential in order to be able to do that. Your tenant retention rates. You want to monitor your tenant retention. How high is your tenant retention rate? because that indicates the success of your marketing and overall property management efforts. Because marketing isn't just about reaching new tenants, marketing is also about your existing tenants and retaining those tenants. And that's why we were talking about things such as the property message board and communicating and fostering that relationship and really building your brand around your rental property or properties, as being like this really cool place that people love. They want to stay there. They want to refer their friends there. When even if they have to leave the rental property because of life change or a job relocation or they got married or whatever it might be, I've seen many rental properties that have really fostered that brand and that loyalty to their rental property to the point where their prior tenants will literally jump on their social media pages and comment and be like, I loved staying at this place. The property manager was amazing. They did this, they had that, they communicated. Like, it's just this whole thing that goes into marketing and it affects your current tenants as well as attracting new tenants. And so focusing your marketing efforts on retaining tenants is, I would say, equally as important as reaching new tenants, if not more so, because every time a tenant leaves, you have turnover costs and vacancy and the whole nine yards. It just costs you money. And so it's much easier to keep your tenants and cheaper to keep your tenants than any form of marketing you could possibly do. Regularly analyzing these metrics, comparing them with your marketing goals, and making data-driven decisions to optimize your marketing strategies is essential. We're going to fly through this because we are way over time and we have just a few minutes before we strike 11 o'clock. For those of you who have stuck around, I appreciate your patience and hopefully the information we've been talking about has been of value to you. And apologies if I go too quick, but we are going to fly through the last of this presentation. So, how to maximize the benefits of TenantCloud's marketing tools. One, you want to make sure that you have complete and accurate property listings that provide comprehensive and accurate information. High quality photos, cannot overemphasize that enough. High quality photos are the first impression. That's the first thing that draws somebody in. High quality photos, high quality walkthrough video. Those are incredibly important. Secondary is the detailed description. And third is any unique features or amenities that need to be highlighted for the demographic that you are trying to communicate with. Regularly update your listings. There's nothing worse than somebody finding listings that are outdated, have outdated pricing because they weren't updated from the last time that you had listed it and you forgot to do it this time. That's why on the TenantCloud listing platform, every time you go to list a new listing, it requires that you put in a new updated market rent amount as well as an updated move-in date and an updated security deposit amount. And it will require that you refresh your listing every 30 days unless you're on the business plan. The business plan does come with an automatic refresh every 30 days, so you don't have to worry about doing it every 30 days. However, I would say for the vast majority of people, nobody has a listing right now as of yet sitting for over 30 days, even as the vacancy rates continue to tick up across the nation. Most people are renting their listings out in under 30 days right now. Engaging on social media, make sure that if people comment, that you respond to comments, even if it's not really a comment that seems like it needs a response. Even just a quick comment, replying to it is always good. It's also helpful for the algorithm gods because it helps engagement rates on your posts, because a lot of posts now will not surface to more new people if it's not getting any engagement. So, and not just engagement from other people, but your response to the engagement from other people has an impact on the algorithm on almost every social media platform right now. So make sure you're engaging with comments, responding to comments, all of that good stuff on social media. Make sure you leverage the email marketing wait lists. Make sure that you utilize any of your incoming leads. They come in with an email address. They come in with a phone number. Make sure that you are utilizing your lead list. That's an automatic funnel coming into your site, and incorporate that into a marketing and wait list. And make sure that you are communicating with people who may not have qualified the first time around. Maybe you didn't have what they were looking for the first time around. Maybe you were out of their price point the first time around. You can keep those people on an email marketing or wait list and just keep them interested, because even if they can't rent at your rental property, doesn't mean they don't know somebody who can and will. And if you maintain your communication and treat your rental property like a business and continue marketing even to people who may not have done business with you from the get go, you'd be surprised what kind of reach expands for your rental property. Encourage tenant reviews. There's nothing more powerful than reviews. That is probably the single most powerful marketing tool that anybody can utilize, and it's typically free. All you have to do is ask for it. And so, if you can ask your prior tenants, of course, you might want to make sure that they were happy tenants, but reach out to them after they've moved out and say, hey, we really enjoyed having you at the rental property. We'd love it if you could help us out with our marketing and record a quick 15 or 30-second video highlighting some of the things you really enjoyed. Leave us a review on Google Reviews or Facebook business page or whatever it might be, because that is called social proof. And people, especially younger generations, are looking for social proof before they do business with anybody, and that includes rental properties. And so social proof through tenant reviews is powerful. And if you can get people to leave videos, those are even more powerful, and you can utilize them in even more places than just utilizing Facebook reviews. You can send those out. You can put them in ads on social media. You can utilize videos in a lot more ways than you can utilize just a regular written review. Utilize the tenant portal features. Tenant portal features such as reporting rent for their credit and utilizing the maintenance request portal and online rent payments and communication through TC Messenger. There are a lot of platforms out there, especially for small to medium landlords, who don't have a lot of these features. And so include these in your marketing content, in your messaging. Let your tenants or prospective tenants know you can pay rent online. You can submit maintenance requests. You can track the maintenance request progress in the portal online. It's automated. You can communicate with us through the TC Messenger. You don't have to worry about calling us because, again, people hate calling. You can message us through TC Messenger, and all of the records are retained in the TenantCloud system. So you can always see our conversation history, and you can view your historic maintenance request history. You can attach photos and videos to the maintenance request when you submit it, so that we don't have to have this back and forth of trying to explain what the problem is. You can just take a 15-second video of it and show us what the issue is. And those are all things that tenants are looking for. They demand these days, in many cases, to have that technology because everybody pretty much renting now, the largest demographic of renters today, grew up with a smartphone literally in their hand the day they were born. And so they know how to use it. They demand to be able to use it in pretty much every aspect of their life. And the easier you make that for them, the better. And so those are highlights you want to include in your rental marketing messaging. Monitor your competitors. Keep an eye on competitors' marketing strategies and offerings. If you're not getting engagement on social media, then look at what your competitors are doing or other people in your neighborhood or your region are doing, and what type of posts are they posting? What pictures are they posting? How are they interacting with people who comment on their social media pages and the like? And there's a ton of different ways that you can monitor competitors. It's not just keeping tabs on what their prices are like, but there are a bunch of different ways that you can monitor your competitors, and then the ones that are successful, you can emulate them in those areas so that you too can see increased success on whatever marketing efforts you are currently lacking on. Oh, and joining webinars like this one so that you can stay updated on trends and research and surveys and new tools and the like. And consistent branding. And maintain consistent branding across all marketing channels and materials. Again, this is essential as well. This is one of those more subtle things where your brand color stays the same. Make sure the color code is the same across all of your platforms. Make sure your business name, phone number, email address, website is consistent across all of your marketing platforms. Make sure that you use a consistent messaging across the various platforms when possible. Make sure your pictures are up to date. Make sure they're consistently awesome photos. Make sure your social media posts are always of a certain quality or a certain genre and the like. And those things will all reinforce your identity and enhance your brand recognition over time. We already really covered this one, but seek tenant feedback, not just in the form of reviews, but also through feedback forms and surveys and informal conversations, just to see how you can do things better. If there's anything that can be improved, is there anything they didn't like about your rental property that maybe it's a simple fix for you to change that would make it even more attractive? And consistently doing those surveys and getting that feedback from both your current and previous tenants can be a very powerful tool to help you strengthen your marketing efforts. And stay up to date. Keep yourself informed about new features and updates on TenantCloud. We're consistently doing updates throughout the year. And believe it or not, over 70% of our yearly updates and features tend to be a direct result of user feedback, because like I was just talking about you getting feedback from your tenants, we do the same thing with TenantCloud users. We consistently do surveys, get feedback, we have conversations, we call and talk with our users, because it's important to us to know what we're doing poorly, what we're doing well, and what we can improve on to make the experience even better. And that includes things like webinars. One of the things that we consistently heard back from a lot of users was, it would be great if you guys could do more of these webinars. And so that is what we have been doing. So I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation and have gotten some value out of the content that we have discussed. And we'll go ahead and answer any questions that have come through. Again, I appreciate anybody that has stuck through this presentation so far. I realize that it has been lengthy, and I know that it's also the 13th of the month, so hopefully it's a little bit slower now that you're out of collection week and whatnot. But I'll go ahead and look through some of these questions here. Wow, lots of questions. That's awesome. Let's see. What, tenant relations isn't rocket science? Hopefully not. Well, for some people, maybe it is. Maybe it's a little harder for some people than others, but hopefully it's not too difficult for most people. Can you do credit and background check as well? Yes, you can do credit and background, or you can do just a credit or just a background. In fact, we just released a new feature. Again, something that we were getting back from surveys from tenants, from users, which was being able to verify, or at least getting some sense of whether or not people were being honest about their income. So when you go to do a screening now, we have a new add-on in the screening process where you can do, I don't know the official name of it, they just released it the other day, but basically it gives you an indication based on all of records available that our system can pull of whether or not the person is being accurate. And the demo that I saw of it from the screening agency was basically, it will tell you, it said something like, this applicant's income has an 80% chance of being accurate, and that we believe that their income either meets or exceeds the amount that they entered on the application form. So when somebody fills out their application, they put in on there the amount of money that they make, and the tool basically determines, or helps you determine, if that's accurate within a certain percentage or not. And so if you're not familiar with, there's a big issue going on right now. It's been getting worse every year. But basically people are able to falsify income documents. And so having the ability to try to catch that is difficult. And there haven't been a lot of tools that have really helped stop that as of yet. And even organizations that, or even screening tools where they reach out to the applicant's company that was put on the form, sometimes they can't get through. Sometimes the HR departments won't give that information, even if the tenant has signed off on it. And there were just a whole host of issues. And so there's been a lot of efforts recently, technology-wise, to try to supplement the information provided on the application in order to be able to, or not supplement, to be able to parse the information on the application to be able to determine whether or not the person is being honest about their level of income, regardless of what pay stubs or tax statements or whatever they've turned into you. The tool itself helps to identify whether or not they're being accurate. And so we just rolled that out in the past week. I think it was a few days ago, sometime late last week. So if you haven't seen that yet, that is a new feature on the Tenant Cloud platform as a part of the screening process. It's not required. It is an add-on. I think it's only like $6 or something more to add it on to a screening. And it really helps to identify whether or not the applicant is being forthright about their actual income. If I list a property while my tenant is still in the property, will there be any impact? No impact, none of that. They won't be notified, none of that issue. You're fine to list a rental property whether somebody has an active lease on it or not. In fact, that's another podcast episode that I'll be doing probably in another, I think it's going to air, it's a few episodes away, so it's probably going to be a little ways from now, but it's actually going to discuss the specific strategy about how to do those listings, not just from the software perspective, but from a strategy perspective, and when to send the renewal offer out, how to incentivize the tenant to e-sign or to sign the renewal early, how to use fear of loss and a sense of urgency, and so on. And then when to list the property, when to start asking or when to start accepting applications on it, and so on. So if you haven't listened to our podcast, definitely encourage you to do so. I think you'll find that our podcasts are pretty similar to these webinars. So if you find the information on these webinars helpful, then definitely tune in to the podcast as well. Let's see. What are some things to keep in mind when making those walkthrough videos? Well, the first thing is it needs to be engaging, because a lot of videos, again, people's attention spans are really short. In fact, TikTok, they've found that the most popular videos on TikTok and actually Instagram are, I think, under 90 seconds now. And like that's the vast majority of all of the videos are super fast. So instead of doing like a traditional YouTube video where you walk through and you show every single thing and you're talking and walking slowly and panning the camera around, it's probably worth testing to just do quick shots of things. And maybe even if you're an entertaining person or funny person or whatever, make the video that way too. Let your personality carry over into the video that you're creating so that it engages people, draws people in, and people engage with it and stay tuned to it and watch it. That's really the only thing I could probably say, but you'd probably just want to test it. Again, it's based on your demographic and your rental and all that good stuff. So maybe your demographic is not the current TikTok and Instagram generation. Maybe it's a slightly older generation, and maybe they prefer the more detailed walkthrough videos. So you really just kind of have to test it out with your particular rental property. What are all the listing partner websites that feed out our listing through the syndication option? So there's quite a few, but some of the bigger ones are Zillow, apartments.com, realtor.com, Rentler, and of course, it syndicates out to like Hotpads, Trulia, and then I think Oodle is another one. And then each of those big ones syndicates out to their own sister network of sites. So I don't know the names of all of them, but it gets out to quite a few of the major listing websites and then their sister networks. And so you tend to get a lot of leads through there just through the syndication tool. And so for most markets, that's probably going to be adequate for your marketing needs in terms of your online syndication. With social media it's too easy for someone to click and inquire yet never follow up. I've wasted a lot of time responding to inquiries that went nowhere. When a prospect makes contact outside of social media, the response rate improves. Yeah, that's probably true in a lot of rental markets. That may also change over time because of the current generations and their utilization of social media tools and whatnot. But I can totally see that being the case. And if you're finding that in your particular market, that's not where you get the most traction, then it's probably best to not focus that energy there and to focus on the places that you're getting the best results. So definitely a good point. Let's see here. One thing I hate about TC is you get a notice that someone has contacted you, clicked on the notice, it goes to TC, and all are there, new and old, not arranged by date. So if you have any feedback like that about the way specific features and things work, I highly recommend putting in an idea ticket. If you click on the support button on the bottom left-hand corner of your site and put in, I need support, or submit a support ticket, the button right there, it's going to ask you two types of tickets. One, I need help, or one, I have an idea. And if you put in I have an idea, that's where I was saying earlier, over 70% of the feedback that we get from our tenants is utilized, or from our users is utilized for making improvements to existing tools and introducing new tools and features on the platform. So I highly recommend putting in that feedback there. They'll take it from you, and it'll be much more powerful and carry much more weight coming directly from your account than it would from me trying to tell the product management team to make that change. So if you could put that feedback in, and anybody else who agrees with that, definitely put in a feedback ticket so that the more people that ask, the more likely it is to happen. So does TC give you the ability to track leads? Yes. We have a CRM, customer relationship management tool. You'll find it under the listings tab on the left side menu. Does TC track your KPIs with respect to lead sourcing and conversion? It does not. That's actually what I recently asked our product team if they could build a dashboard that tracks KPIs with respect to lead sourcing and conversion. And you could help me out with that. Again, if you can go ahead and put in a feedback ticket and echo those sentiments directly to our product management team. Again, your feedback as a user carries much more weight than it does from me. And we'll get that prioritized and built a lot faster than just my feedback to the product management team. They listen to our users more than they listen to me. So if you could help me out with that, that would be fantastic. Why does TC listings automatically expire? That is because that is primarily an agreement between us and the syndication partners. A lot of them will terminate your listing at the end of 30 days anyway. And the only way that we do auto refresh is on the TenantCloud side. On the business plan, we basically auto refresh it on our end automatically through code because the various listing sites will typically expire your listing automatically in 30 days because that's their way of making sure that there are not a bunch of stale listings on their websites that are no longer available, because then that makes their user experience for prospective tenants looking for rentals a very poor experience and turns them away from that platform. So in an effort for a lot of listing websites to curb those number of no longer available listings, a lot of them now just automatically expire them every 30 days. Do all the features work in the United Kingdom? Not necessarily. There's a few things that don't. We have a lot of international users, but the United States is still the primary location where the vast majority of our users are. However, we do have a ton of international users who utilize the platform. The core features that don't work internationally are listings, of course, because we don't have any listing syndication partners outside of the United States. And I think we have maybe one in Canada. I think apartments.com recently expanded into Canada. And screenings, because our screenings are all done through TransUnion. TransUnion does not do screenings in most other countries around the world. And so we only have the API integration for the US based screenings. So if you are international, you will not be able to do those two things. So hopefully that answers that question, and the one that just came in about only for the US. It's not just for the US. It's just that the listings and screenings specifically will not work overseas. So if you can get by without those things, like a lot of our other international users, then we definitely welcome you on board to the TenantCloud platform. Otherwise, we totally understand if you need those features and have to go elsewhere, but we'd love to have you on the TenantCloud platform. I think that pretty much wraps up the webinar here. I don't think we've had any more questions come through, and we are way beyond the time frame that we set. And actually, it looks like most people stuck through the webinar. I am impressed that you stuck through that long, so thank you. And hopefully the time that you spent was worthwhile. And definitely look forward to seeing you on the TenantCloud platform. If you think of anything else, feel free to reach out to our support team. Our support team is more than happy to assist you. In fact, a lot of them actually have property management experience themselves and are now working on the software side of things. So we're certainly happy to help you and answer any questions you have. Feel free to reach out if you think of something else. Otherwise, again, thank you for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the TenantCloud platform.